In this video, I'm going to answer all your questions for me about the upcoming NFL season. The premise is pretty simple, so let's just get into it. Exemplary Turtle, what are your personal odds on the Lions making the playoffs? I would say somewhere between 15 to 20%, and I know that seems low, but you have to remember this is the Detroit Lions, and nothing good ever happens for the Lions. It's the same thing with the Browns. You think, okay, they have some momentum, they have some talent, they're going the right direction. Oh, no, then there's a 6-11 season. That's just what happens with the Lions. They suck and they always will suck. Brad Marchand Enjoyer 6680. As a completely unbiased sports fan, how do you think the Patriots will do this season? I see them being the same team they have been the last couple years in the post-Brady era, as the AFC East has gotten way better, and Mac Jones, I don't know, he still remains an unknown. This is a make or break year for him. I think he's pretty mediocre, so I think they'll still have a great defense as always, but I see them finishing around 500, 9-8, 8-9 again, and I think Bill Belichick will be let go at the end of the season because there's a lot more tension between him and famous massage parlor enthusiast Robert Kraft than people like talk about. TK Remix 6656. What will Aaron Rodgers do with the Jets this season? He's going to play quarterback. We know that for sure. I think he's going to have a bounce back year. I think last year was arguably the worst full season of his career. I don't think he suddenly went from being a two-time MVP to completely washed up overnight. Now he's got good players around him with the Jets. I think he's going to do well, individually at least. Dave Mustang 8173. Jaguars chances at the playoffs with Calvin Ridley back and Trevor's early career nervousness gone. Normally I would say the Jaguars are a regression candidate, but I'm going to actually say they are going to make the playoffs again just because the AFC South is so dog shit that they could go 9-8 or 10-7 and win it again. So I do think if you look at the teams in that division right now, I think they have the most talent, so there's really no reason why they shouldn't repeat. I won't even bother trying to say this guy's username. How do you feel about Tom Brady finally not being a part of a year? Now, I'm going to say I'm recording this on August 12th, so if Brady comes out of retirement after this is recorded, then I'm going to be pissed. But to answer the question, knock on wood, I am so happy about it that I don't have to watch that check down Rob Gronkowski merchant play anymore. It was annoying as shit for 20 plus years having to watch him play like ass for 3 quarters while his defense keeps him in the game, and then in the 4th quarter he magically turns into the Terminator and starts throwing for touchdowns. There's no way the guy wasn't point shaving. I'm sorry. There's no way the guy wasn't point shaving throughout his career. But I'm so glad he's gone. The sport is so much better off. Mason 911, never forget. Thoughts on Bryce Young's rookie season, and will he end up being the best quarterback in Panthers history? I expect him to be pretty average at best, or I don't expect anything special from Bryce Young because he's so tiny. And will he end up being the best quarterback in Panthers history? I don't see him being as good as Cam Newton. I don't see him ever winning an MVP or making a Super Bowl, so no. Crunchy Toast 6007. How many Super Bowl titles would Aaron need with the Jets to put himself back in the GOAT convo? I think the Aaron Rodgers GOAT conversation sailed, a couple years ago, specifically the night that he lost to the 49ers at home when his defense gave up just 6 points. That was the final straw for me. So he would have to rip off like 6 consecutive titles with the Jets in order to actually have a legit shot at the GOAT convo. But honestly, all of his thunder has been stolen by Mahomes. So Mahomes is the guy now that has the potential to finally usurp Brady someday as the consensus GOAT. Rodgers' time has passed, which is sad because there was once a time where I thought he was going to be the guy with 4 or 5 rings, but it didn't turn out that way. Ryan CN5G, do you think Seattle can be a sleeper to win the West, or do you think their defensive line struggles will have them lose to the Niners again? I don't think as long as the Niners are healthy that any other team in the NFC West has a chance. I expect the Rams to bounce back as well, with Stafford being healthy again and Kupp being healthy, both of them incredibly hard workers. So I think Seattle can maybe sneak in with a wild card spot, but I don't think they have any chance of finishing over a healthy 49ers. Lollyballs 7735. Do you think Brock Purdy can sustain success this season? I think he will continue to have success because Kyle Shanahan's a great offensive mind, and I think he did show some legitimate flashes of talent last year. But it's going to be like the same thing with Jimmy Garoppolo, where he puts up great numbers and the 49ers win a lot of games, but the question is, how much of it's a product Kyle Shanahan? So I think Brock Purdy's success will continue, but I think that the questions of who deserves the credit for his success will also continue. Goto45, is it more beneficial to have the best kicker in the league or worse to have the worst kicker in the league? Which affects the game more? I think the answer is easily it's worse to have the worst kicker in the league, because you look at Justin Tucker. I mean, look, what have the Ravens done since 2012? Justin Tucker's been the best kicker in the world, no offense to Messi fans, since they won the Super Bowl in 2012. 12, and they've won a lot of games, but they haven't done shit in the playoffs. If you have a terrible kicker and you're not able to capitalize on red zone opportunities with at least 3 points, then you're just making it's like tying an anvil to your back. It's just horrendous. Dan Crux, 6929. Do you think the Giants keep up the fairy tale run or fall back down to earth this season? I don't think any team that has Daniel Jones employed as their starting quarterback is set up for sustained success. Now, I mean, could they sneak into the playoffs? I don't think they will. I certainly don't think they'll win a playoff game again, unless, of course, they somehow wind up playing against Kirk Cousins again, because Kirk Cousins just has terrible luck. I think they'll be around 6-11 or 7-10. That's what I think. Again, not going to try and say this guy's username. Do you think Jordan Love can play on par with his two predecessors, or do you think Green Bay will struggle heavily post Rodgers? Well, basically, the first part of the question, do I think he can be on par with his two predecessors, who are both first ballot Hall of Fame quarterbacks? I don't think Jordan Love, I mean, the chances of having 3 straight first ballot Hall of Fame quarterbacks play for your team is, I don't know, it's unfathomable to think about. So I'm going to go with the odds and say Jordan Love won't become as good as Favre or Rodgers, but I do think that he has some physical tools, so I don't think he'll be horrible. I think he'll basically be, when all said and done, I think he'll be in that top 15, 20-ish tier. Not great, not terrible. Only it might look terrible because the last 30 years or so in Green Bay, they've seen so many great seasons. And for the second part of the question, I think the Packers will be mediocre in the post-Rodgers era. Ryan Carroll, 1697, outside of the Eagles and Chiefs, who do you think could play in the Super Bowl? I think in the AFC, it's the usual suspects. The Bills and the Bengals are the clear other two there. The NFC, I think the Niners are the best non-Eagles team in the conference. So hope that answers the question. It's pretty boring, but I think you look at all those teams, I think they're all set up for success for a long time. Media Man Shorts, 3385. Do you think Dak Prescott can lead the Cowboys to a Super Bowl this year? Absolutely, if he buys the entire team tickets once the Cowboys are eliminated before the conference championship game. Shout out 35 King. Will Jimmy Garoppolo break my heart this season? No, he would never do something like that. Jimmy Garoppolo is a great person. He's a class act, and he's also gorgeous. So he will not break your heart, on or off field. Juicebox 8560. Do you think the Broncos make the playoffs this year? Could you go as far as to say they're a dark horse Super Bowl team? No, they're not a dark horse Super Bowl team. Could they make the playoffs? I mean, sure, they have a great defense, and I expect Russell Wilson to bounce back at least somewhat from his dreadful season last year. I think Sean Payton will help him do that. So again, I think they're another team that is going to be in that mediocre range. I don't think they'll be outright terrible, but they're not going to be some team that other teams are afraid of. Ian 91911. If Mahomes has the worst year of his career, do you think the media and fans turn on him, or has he been too great so far for that to happen? The worst year of Mahomes' career is probably still like a top 10 season in the league. You have to think about the standards here. I mean, the guy is on pace to be a top 2 quarterback ever. So if he has a quote-unquote off year and the Chiefs don't win, I think he's earned a year where he's not lights out. So I think he's pretty much Teflon for the rest of his career, considering what he's done so far in his first 5 years. Unless you're talking about the GOAT combo. Every other conversation, he's golden. KC the blah fan 2890. How do you feel about the Super Bowl being given an alternate broadcast on Nickelodeon this year? I love it. I think they should do every game on Nickelodeon with the slime factor and the graphics. That is one of the best things the NFL has done in recent memory. I want more of it. Trouble J 1035. Odd question, but Matt Ryan's my favorite player. Do you see him ever playing again, or is this the end of the road? I think he's done, man. I think he's been done for at least 2 years. Last year, just go out, have some dignity, at least whatever dignity you have left after that 28-3 shit, and transition to being the studio analyst that everybody knows you were destined to be after your playing days were over. Joey Gooby 2670. Will Jalen Hurts improve, regress, or stay the same? Obviously, I'm biased as an Eagles fan, but every single year of his career, and even going back to college at Oklahoma and Alabama, the guy has just seemed to get better and better every single year. It's hard to say he'll get maybe noticeably better because he was one of the best quarterbacks in the league next season, but I could definitely see him being just as good, if not slightly better than he was last year. There's no reason why he wouldn't be. Jewish Cola, what team do you think is a dark horse for the AFC and NFC? This one actually made me think a lot. Talking about dark horse meaning something that is not likely to happen, but still could happen. I guess for me, the AFC, I would say Baltimore making it, because as long as Lamar Jackson's been healthy, they've won in the regular season 8% of their games or something crazy like that. So who knows? If Lamar Jackson stays healthy, I think Baltimore is a dark horse candidate to win the AFC. I don't see it happening, but that would be my pick. The NFC is tougher because I don't think any teams besides Philly or San Francisco have a chance. chance. But if you're going to hold a gun to my head because you're a douche, I might actually say New Orleans and Derek Carr, because the NFC South is going to be terrible and the Saints have a good defense. So maybe Derek Carr, Chris Olave, that combination, who knows? But they would be my dark horse for the NFC. But again, I do not see that happening. BB3764, how do you thrill CJ Stroud will do? Also, love the videos, Barry. Thank you. I think just off of precedent, CJ Stroud is going to bomb in the NFL because he went to Ohio State. I mean, besides Joe Burrow, and he doesn't count because he threw, like 20 passes at Ohio State before he transferred. There's literally never been a good quarterback in the NFL from Ohio State. There has to be something to that, okay? There just has to be something to that. So CJ Stroud, the Texans are terrible. I think he's going to struggle. I think this is going to be David Carr 2.0. My hopes for him are not very high. Nick off the water. Who will lead the NFL in interceptions? This seems like a two-part question if you mean which quarterback will throw the most interceptions or which defender will get the most interceptions. I think maybe if you're talking about a defender, Xavier Howard, Miami, might get some extra chances, although Jalen Ramsey is going to miss a decent amount of time. But if Jalen Ramsey's out there on the field, teams might test Xavier Howard more, so I could see him leading the league in interceptions. In terms of which quarterback will lead the league in interceptions, I think I would go with Matthew Stafford, just because it's the Rams and he's known as a gunslinger and he's going to throw the ball a lot because the Rams are going to be losing a lot. So I would say Stafford will lead the league in picks. Randy6892, Dexter Lawrence or Quinnen Williams. I don't pretend to be the defensive lineman whisperer, but I guess I would choose Williams just because he offers more as a pass rusher than Lawrence does, and I think at the end of the day, that's what matters most in the current NFL. Krista1 Pista1, which previous AFC playoff team has the highest potential to not make it this year? Let's see, Kansas City, Buffalo, and Cincy are locks to make it. I think Baltimore makes it again. The Chargers should make it, so that leaves Miami and Jacksonville. I'm going to say Miami is the odd team out here because, again, the AFC South is so bad, and you can never tell when Tua is going to get hurt again because of all the concussions. So I say Miami is the odd team out here. Sniz Dog Jenkins. Hey, Barry, I love the channel. Thanks. How long do you typically spend wiping? Asking for a friend. It depends on the type of shit. If it's a really dry shit, I maybe need just 1 or 2 wipes, but if it's a really wet, dirty shit that has a bunch of shit clinging to your, perineum ring around your asshole, it might take 4 or 5 wipes. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get my asshole clean because I'm a hero and I have integrity. Vinny6, Addison and Jefferson look to wreak havoc or flop for the Vikings. Well, Jefferson's going to be great. We know that. Addison should benefit from playing off him, but again, their quarterback is Kirk Cousins, and some quarterbacks are just destined to never have good things. And so I think those 2 guys will put up great numbers, and I think the Vikings will fail to do anything in the playoffs again because Kirk Cousins is their quarterback. Not because Cousins is terrible, but because he just is the exact opposite of Tom Brady when it comes to luck. Jimbo8373, who is your pick for MVP? I think right now the answer is Mahomes until otherwise. He's entering the start of his prime, and the Chiefs have a roster that's not loaded outside of Travis Kelce. Besides Travis Kelce, offensively, really, what great players do they have? So it's not as if the voters will say, oh, well, this guy, he's a great player, but he's got so many weapons around him. I think he's in the perfect place right now to where he's still got his main guy, Kelce, but he doesn't have the other real big names to really affect his MVP stock. And also, just use your eyes. He's the best player in the league right now. So as long as he stays healthy, I think he will repeat. Sun God Nickelodeon 134. Eagles winning the Super Bowl? You know it. 467 Troy. Do you think Tyreek Hill or Justin Jefferson will lead the league in receiving yards this upcoming season? I don't think Tyreek will do it because, again, I don't expect Tua to stay healthy and that will affect his numbers. I think it'll either be Justin Jefferson. I think Garrett Wilson is a dark horse to do it with Rodgers there. Devontae Adams is always in the mix for any receiving leading category. But yeah, I would say in terms of yards, Justin Jefferson is probably the favorite there. Monvo707. Barry, mustard or ketchup? I have nothing against either. When it comes to hot dogs, I don't really eat hot dogs a lot anymore because I'm not a fat lard anymore. But when I used to eat hot dogs, I always had mustard. I don't like ketchup on hot dogs. Other than that, I don't really know of anything else to use mustard for, and I'm fine with using ketchup for anything, but I'm not one of those ketchup freaks like Mahomes where you have to put ketchup on eggs and shit like that. That's gross. But gun to my head, I would say ketchup, I guess, because I use it for more things. Cole Carmichael, 5724. If Russell Wilson flops again, is he done for, or will he bounce around the league, give him more chances? I would have to think that even if he flops again, based off of his resume and what he did in Seattle, he would get at least one more chance if he bombs in Denver again this year. I mean, really, but think about all the crappy quarterbacks who get multiple chances. Russell Wilson's a guy who someday is most likely going to be in the Hall of Fame. So he'll get a chance with the third team no matter how bad this year is. Mac U817. Out of the 3 rookie quarterbacks in the top 5, who has the highest floor ceiling? I guess I would say Bryce Young has the highest floor. And the highest ceiling is obviously Anthony Richardson, because physically he might be the greatest specimen to ever play quarterback. If it turns out that he ends up becoming good and combines that freakish athleticism with knowing all the intricacies of playing quarterback, then he might be the best quarterback ever. I mean, his ceiling is, there's no ceiling on that guy. I don't expect that to happen, by the way, but that's just the question. So highest floor, Bryce Young. Highest ceiling, Anthony Richardson. Relentless cashed out. Which quarterback will let down their team in the playoffs? There's at least one every year, so gotta be another one this year. As much as I hate to say it, the answer here is Aaron Rodgers. If the Jets make the playoffs, the guy has not made the Super Bowl since 2010. Now, he should have made it in 2014, probably, if not for Brandon Bostic. But the most incredible stat and fact is that Aaron Hernandez has played in a Super Bowl more recently than Aaron Rodgers. Okay? There's just something missing with A-Rod. He's one of my favorite quarterbacks ever. He's one of the greatest quarterbacks ever. But Jets fans are going to be in for a rude awakening if team makes the playoffs, which they should, and A-Rod disappears for long stretches of a game or doesn't come through late in the fourth quarter. That's how each of his last 3 seasons have ended in Green Bay. So I love watching the guy play, but he's just not trustworthy in the playoffs. Adam McAllister, 5773. Do you care about the preseason? If not, should anyone care about the preseason? Should anybody care about anything? What's the point of anything? Life sucks and then you die. But I guess to answer your question, do I care about the preseason? No, because the games don't count. Really, the whole thing about preseason is you just want to make sure that all your star players make it through healthy and there are no major injuries. It can be meaningful in terms of discovering diamonds in the rough, so I wouldn't say it's completely useless, but entertainment value wise, it's not indicative of how good a team is. Just look at the '08 Lions, and then the entertainment factor is usually not that great. But should anyone care about the preseason? I guess people who love gambling. And finally, Jux Lux SR. Do you think the Bills will go all the way this year, and if they don't and they get upset in the playoffs again, what would happen? As I talked about before, the Bills are in a weird spot now where they're in contention every single year, but they can't get over the hump. And so the question is McDermott really the guy? Will they try and shake things up if they can't get over the hump? Or do you just keep knocking at the door until you finally knock it over? At some point, you're going to have to get through Patrick Mahomes. That's what it's going to come down to. I think if they make it to the AFC Championship game or they lose to Mahomes in the playoffs again this year, I think they're going to just keep running it back and saying, hey, one of these years, we just hope that he's not in our way along our path to the Super Bowl. But if they do get upset by some team, then I do think there could be some changes. And they might say, we have this great team and we're underachieving. We can kind of similar like to Mark Jackson and Steve Kerr with the Warriors a decade ago. But to answer the question, no, I don't think the Bills will go all the way. And if they get upset in the playoffs again by anybody but Kansas City, I do think they would seriously consider making a coaching change.